Hey everybody, it's the Welcome to Home Building podcast where you can learn about home building the quick and easy way. I'm your host Brad Hubbard, and you might be wondering what qualifies me to have a podcast about home building anyway. Well, I've been in this incredible industry since 1993, managing home building companies through the good times and the bad, and I've built over 1,000 new homes in that time. For the last few years, I've been consulting and teaching home builders all across North America. And in all this time, I had to learn things the hard way. Well, this podcast is all about helping you learn the home building industry the easy way. It's a mix of interviews, real-life scenarios, helpful tips, and probably a good bit of my goofy humor to make you understand how this industry really works, and how crazy and fun it can be. So as we get started on this episode, let me just say, welcome to home building. Now, this first episode was actually recorded about 9 months ago, and I had intended to release it sooner than this. However, I had this podcast idea to help out those new to the industry, and this just seemed like an appropriate first episode. In it, I'm pleased to introduce you to Amanda Jewell, who was brand new to the home building industry when she was tasked with managing her own father's house, who just happens to have a home building company himself and has been building himself for about 40 years. So she faced the struggles of being brand new to the industry. She also knew that people recognized that she was the daughter of the owner. Add the fact that she's a woman in a traditionally male-dominated industry, and you have a recipe for what could have been a disaster. Now you'll get to hear how she dealt with that, and even went ahead and wrote a children's book based on her experiences to encourage other women to join the industry. And it's a wonderful book. It's called Panda, the Project Manager. I happen to have it right here. And I really encourage you to pick up a copy for yourself. And maybe even get in a couple extra copies for your local HBA, your library, or wherever. There's a link to the book in the show notes. So, enough of my intro. Let's get on to the interview. So anyway, hey, thanks so much for joining me coming into the studio. I'm so happy to have you too, Amanda. If you don't mind, for those who don't know you yet, take a moment, just say hi to everybody, introduce yourself, a little bit about your family, history, work experience, all that kind of good stuff too.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's
Sure.
a pleasure to be here. So my name is Amanda Jewell, and I am new to home building. I recently just wrote my first children's book called Panda, the Project Manager Built Her First Home, and it's based on my experiences in this industry. My family has been building homes in New Mexico since around 1982. My dad and his brother, Tom and Jim French, started French Brothers Homes here. So we've been doing that for a while. I grew up on job sites. I swept job sites in the summer growing up. More than I would like to have.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I come from family business too, family home building business too, and did enough out there to be dangerous too. And it was usually I was told I was, didn't do enough as you go. So I know how it goes in that family business. So.
Exactly. So I actually went to college in Louisiana, and I have a master's in mental health counseling.
Okay.
So my background
always good in home building. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially in a family business, I feel like that definitely comes in handy.
Definitely. I often say home building is tough to begin with. Yeah, a little bit of family in there, and that just, no matter if they say they can leave at the dinner table or not, it's always tougher that way too. It never happens. So.
And home building is really about working with people, and so I feel like that does give me a great advantage with my background in mental health counseling. Right. And so my husband was in the military for about 10 years. And after he got out, we decided to come back to New Mexico, and he's actually working for the family business as well.
Nice.
And so here we are.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks so much for being part of this too. Certainly, the reason I brought you in, I picked up your book, and I think it was right around the time of Women in Construction Week when I first noticed it, because obviously it was all over the place, all the social media, everybody was talking about it. There are other books out there that folks see in terms of the women in construction, and just happened to notice that yours was out there too. I think maybe it was your father who shared it or something. That's how I first saw it on LinkedIn. And it's Panda, the Project Manager. I have it here. I know this is an audio only, but just in case anybody can see through from the audio, I went and picked it up. So I am legit. I'm sort of like, Amazon. It is a legitimate purchase. To go through there too. So, I actually did read this too, and just didn't get the Cliff's Note, which, I could have done, but it's not tue long.
It's not too long. It's pretty easy to get through.
Good. So can you give me kind of an idea on that one? Why did you decide to to write a children's book anyway, and one that's kind of focused on women in construction. Like, kind of, what was your inspiration? Why was now the time to do it? And what said, heck yeah, I'm new to construction, but I'm going to do it?
Well, there's a number of reasons. I think the story of how it came about is really one of my favorite parts. So when I started building this home with my dad, he just doesn't have the time to build his home himself. He's busy helping other people build their homes. And so I offered my services, and my dad has always called me Panda. All my friends always call me Panda. And so I decided, I was out at the office one day, and I had promoted myself to Panda, the project manager, is how I sign all my emails to my dad whenever I'm corresponding with him about his home. And someone at the office said, I saw an email that you'd signed Panda, the project manager. That's so cute. It sounds like a cartoon. And I said, oh yeah, I should just write a children's book about it. And I left to go pick up my girls from school. And on the way to go pick them up, the idea for the book popped into my head. And in the carpool line, I wrote Panda, the project manager, almost in its entirety while waiting. And it felt like a really fun and whimsical way to provide representation to girls in construction and home building, where there was really a gap. At the time when I was writing it, there weren't really very many, if any, books on the market geared towards girls in the home building industry. Sure. And now there are a couple of great ones, and which is awesome. So I wanted it to be a form of representation. And then in the book, I chose for Panda to be an engineer, even though that's not what my background is in, because I wanted to really have that push towards STEM, because I think that's a really important thing for girls to see, is careers in STEM, and see that they can do that. And I wanted it to be something that my daughters and their friends would want to read in a fun, lovely and colorful way.
No, and I think you've done that. I think you've met all of those different things. It's so nice, and it is so important. You're right, for the STEM and to bring the women into construction and start them early. And there's no better way to do this and to introduce them to something like this.
Thanks. Yes.
So you took one of my questions already. I was going to say, did it mirror real life? So I guess it did mirror real life in a way. And you mentioned this, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording too, though, that kind of regularly you're not doing a lot of construction. This house you're working on for your father is your first one. Is that correct?
Yes, this is my first one. And there's nothing like going big your first time.
That's right.
No pressure building your parents' forever home under your first home that you're in charge of. So.
Yeah, he might know a little bit more than your average customer who you're building a house though too.
He's been doing it for 40 years, so he's been around the block just a little bit.
Right. Well, very good too. Yeah. So there's nothing like the pressure on that too. One of the things in the book that talks about is Panda's secret weapon. And I don't know if I'm going to kind of rack your brain to see if you read the book as well. So do you remember what the secret weapon was? And is that same secret weapon, I guess, or is that same thing exist in real life for women in construction?
I think that the secret weapon is a really important part of this book, because being underestimated is, I think, something that women face in this field, and honestly a lot of fields, just generally speaking, that are primarily male dominated. But I also think that can be used to your advantage. When you have the confidence to back that up, that is what really helps push you forward. And I think that confidence really comes from being prepared. Is, in the book I say Panda woke up early to review all the plans. In the field of building homes, there's a lot that needs to be ran. And I think that's where it comes from. Like, yes, I like many other women have been underestimated in this field, but I also do my research, and I look at the plans, and I ask questions, and I try to figure out what's going on. And so that being underestimated can be your advantage if you choose to let it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, most definitely. And this is coming obviously from a guy asking a woman on this too. We go through. So do you think kind of just in general, because of that and the underestimation and the extra preparation, is it fair to say, and I'm not trying to lead the questioning or anything on this, so if it doesn't tell me, but is it fair to say that, women do have to work harder at it just to kind of prove themselves out at this point? And, I guess, is that a fair assessment?
I think that would absolutely be a fair assessment. I can't say how it is to be a man in the field, because I am not.
Right.
But
understood.
But I have seen, how my experiences are, and French Brothers, the 60% of the staff is female. And so
nice.
that's an exception, I think,
Mm-hmm.
probably industry wide to have that large of a female staff. And so I think that can be something that can be very helpful in that way.
Fair enough. Yeah. So do you have any recommendations just, from what you got for women entering the industry at this point too, in terms of that underestimation, from the book or just in general from your experiences?
I think one of the biggest thing that women can do is not be afraid to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that asking questions is something that women are more likely to do than men. Primarily,
Mm-hmm.
I think
Pride.
based off of ego. I don't think women are necessarily as ego driven as men are. So we're more comfortable asking questions and saying, I don't know the answer to that. Could you explain that to me some more? Or I don't know the answer, but I will get back to you on that. And I think using that and being okay with not knowing the answer right away, but knowing that you can find it out, I think that is something that if you can embrace that, that could be helpful.
And you don't know this is very near and dear to my heart, what you just said too, because what you just said, I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you. My father, of course, I told you I worked for him, just passed about a month ago, as to long career as well. I worked for him for many years, and is one of those builders that I know has forgotten more than I'll ever know. He was just that, from that generation, started in the 60s and kind of going from there. But that's how he always taught me when I went in and didn't know a thing about home building at all. Is you don't try to pull the wool over someone's eyes. They're going to know. The best thing to do is just say, hey, I don't know. I said, but I'll find out and I'll get back to you. That's what he always would say. He said, and then you do it. You do it right away. You pick up the phone, you find out, and then don't just find out what to say, find out the why behind what to say.
Exactly.
So you said that, and I almost teared up for a second just thinking about that too. But it was so fantastic, and that's such a great recommendation for women, or really for anybody in there when they entered new home construction. I think as you move along that too. So you talked a little bit about this and just kind of the difference between asking questions and men and their pride or ego and won't do that too. But part of the book talks about where Panda left little messages in there. Now, were you doing that in your parents' home on that? Is that kind of real life too? And if that is that something men wouldn't normally think to do, or is that just kind of male brain, female brain type of deal?
That line in the book is actually my favorite line in the entire book. It warms my heart in such a way because it feels so true to me. It's something that we have done in all our homes growing up. It is something we did in our current home. We just built about a year ago. It was funny. I had been off the job site and we came back up to work on a few things, and there were messages on like a couple of different walls. And it turns out I like to tease my grandma that she broke into our house and graffitied all over the walls.
Right.
And it's just a generational thing. It's something that we've always done. And even with French Brothers, we have homeowners who will come during the building process and write messages or write Bible verses. And there's something that feels really good about, even when you're home alone, if you're having a bad day, there's love all around you, even in the walls of your home, because you know that those messages are in there. So to me, that feels really special. And I think that's one of the reasons why I just love that stanza in the book so much.
Yeah. Oh, it's so thoughtful to be able to put something on those ends too. And that's why, again, I'm glad I pulled that one out. That was completely unrehearsed, folks. Completely
I know.
unrehearsed.
It really is my favorite. It's the line that always just sticks in my head because it just felt the most real of everything that I wrote in the book.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome. And now knowing the full story, I didn't know that when we first set this up. I was giving the questions in terms of, was your parents' book too is really nice too. Now in the book, and I don't want to give away everything on the book because people should go get it and get it for their kids and their daughters and their sons and everybody out there too. But there's kind of a point in the book where Panda has a pivotal moment where she solves something and is kind of accepted by the other bears that are out there that are not pandas on that too. And again, this goes back to a guy asking a girl about this, or a male asking a female on this too. Do you think that's necessary on the women's side? They need a pivotal point to prove themselves. You can hit me if that's a terrible question to ask, but I just have to ask. I don't know.
I think it's a great question. I think that it is something that probably most people in most fields have a pivotal moment where they do have to prove themselves. But I think it's probably even more true in a field like home building, where it is primarily men and you do have to prove yourself. And I do think we all have that moment, that aha moment where people see it and they get it and they're like, now I know why you're here. Whether you earned your way there or not, too often people have to prove themselves. And I think especially when it's a big pivotal moment, then people really, really see that for what it is.
Oh, it's really good to hear. And it's not like, we're like one of the owner's kids or something like that too, because that we talked about that the structure earlier here in this interview too. Yeah, that makes it even more tough because a lot of times I think, oh, they don't know what they're doing, they just got it because of who they are or something. I struggle with that through a lot of my career too.
Yes, and I mean, in the position I'm in right now, I clearly got it because I am Tom's daughter. It is
sure.
very, very evident as to why I am doing this right now. Right. However, the more I'm on the job site and the more that people interact with me, they do see that I'm not just there to be a face filler and to a space filler.
Space filler, right? Gotcha.
And that I do know what I'm doing, and I am organized, and I can do these things, and it just takes learning and asking questions.
No, that's fantastic. Now, I know, especially now knowing the story here, of course, the Panda's parents in there. Nice nod to your parents as a dad myself, and that warms my heart to see that too. So has their support kind of along the way, again, not being in construction on your end too, and them having the confidence in you, I guess, how has that worked for you as a person now, or a woman in construction too, and whether you continue on or you say, yeah, I've had enough of it after this one or not? Just kind of curious.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. My parents, I really hit the lotto with my parents, and honestly, my entire family. When I came home and told everyone that I wrote a children's book in the carpool line, we all laughed about it. And then no one even second guessed when I said that I was going to start submitting to publishers, that I was going to hire an illustrator, that I was going to turn down 2 publishing deals because I wanted to do it myself. And no one batted an eye because they believed in me, and they knew that if I put my mind to something, I'm going to do it. And my belief that I can do that, I know comes from the 2 of them.
No.
And even though in the book it doesn't identify them as her parents, I tried to make a point not to specifically say that that's her parents, because there's plenty of people who don't have a mom or dad who are their number one support. Maybe it's a grandma, maybe it's an uncle, a best friend. So I wanted it to be a representation that you can have support, and that there's always people who are going to be there and believe in you.
That's interesting. I'll have to look back, because I ultimately just assumed it was parents again, even before I knew the background of it too. So now you've caused me to reread this again too. I'll have to do that, which will be fantastic. And I think that's a fantastic angle that kind of blows my mind. I didn't even think of it that way.
And I tried to pull my background in mental health into the book in as many ways as possible, understanding that family dynamics are different for everyone. And I wanted to use it as a way where kids can see that in a representation. And then even throughout the story, I try to use different verbiage for words like anxiety. At one point she's anxious, at one point she's scared, trying to help kids name emotions in a way that doesn't feel like that's what they're doing, but it helps give them a way to express that.
That's just so neat. Like I said, I definitely have to reread that now and be thinking through that too. And I always need someone to help me, do my literary analysis and go further on that. And who knew there could be so much in one book on that too. Well, Amanda, this is fantastic. I hope everybody goes out and grabs this too. Where is the best place? Is it Amazon to get? Where all can they find this book?
This book is available at most major retailers. It is available on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and hardback. It's also available at Barnes & Noble, online, in hardback edition as well.
Man, oh man, you can find it everywhere, folks, and I suggest get a whole packet of them, take them to your local schools, preschools, whatever, get them out there too. I think it would be fantastic. Thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule just to share this too. It was great meeting you. I can't wait. I'll be down, hopefully again, down to your family's company, and maybe we'll get a chance to meet in person too next time I'm back.
That would be great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.